This is the Clark Connection Podcast, your weekly dose of inspiration and power. We'll dive deep into the stories and strategies that ignite personal growth and entrepreneurial fire. Join us as we empower you to take control, level up your leadership, and build the life you deserve. Get ready to rise, to thrive, and to finally become the leader of your own destiny. Let's go.
Welcome to the Clark Connection Podcast. It's great to be here with you. I'm your host, Aaron Clark, aka Coach Clark. We have a fantastic show for you guys. Joining us will be Josh Fowler, owner of Charge the Line. And for those of you that have been following the show, I'm changing the format up. They added some things. I really do appreciate the comments, the feedback, and that you guys have been giving me, that to be able to put together great content. And as my friend Wayne would say, it gets gooder and gooder. But before we get into the show, I want to give a quick shout out to my sponsors, Bobbie with the Comfy Quest LLC, Andrew with Automate Integrate Professional Services, and Wayne with 7K Metals. And look, all of their information is listed below. It is in the description. They make sure you check it out. They reach out to them. Tell them Coach Clark sent you their way. And also, if you want to connect with me, that you can reach out to me via my website. And for those of you watching on YouTube or Spotify, that I've got it up, you can hit me on all socials at Coach_A_Clark, or via my website, www.coachaclark.com. And look, it's also in the description. So if you reach out to me, I promise I'll get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. And so look, before we bring up Josh, now, I want to go ahead and read you his stats, his leadership highlights. And such a wonderful guy. I promise you're going to love him. And I really enjoyed getting to know him. And so let me go ahead and share that with you. I'm going to pull that up on the screen for those of you watching. Now, Josh, he was part of the Marine Corps for 2 years, medically just discharged. And so very grateful for his service. Spent 24 years in the fire department, working his way up to battalion chief. 24 years in the ministry, continuing to keep doing great work in there. He started in around 2000. He's been the owner of Charge the Line Leadership for the past 6 years. That started in 2018, not 2016. And he's spoken in over 6 states across the United States of America. Currently, the president of the Spindletop Fools, that's the Fraternal Order of Leatherheads, chief of training for Industrial Rescue Fire Department, and probably the coolest stat, he's been married now for 27 years, has 6 children, and 2 grandchildren. And so let's go ahead, let's bring on Josh. And Josh, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Yeah. And so, I just got done reading off your stats, got a lot going on, but, really want to focus. A lot of my focus is that leadership and entrepreneur. And so let's talk about Charge the Line. You said you started that in 2018. Tell me more about that. How did you get to wanting to start Charge the Line? And then what do you guys do as far as y'all's leadership training?
Well, so, it was kind of dumb luck stumbling into it. Entrepreneurship is always on the back of my mind, but never something that I had really looked hard into. I was working a side job as an adjunct instructor at an industrial fire training school and had an idea. And so I got with the owner and said, hey, I've got a great idea, gave him the elevator pitch, and he said no. And I said, well, I don't understand. It's fail safe. Nobody's doing it. We can corner the market, and there's a lot of money to be had based on some studying that I had done and some research. And he looked at me dead in the eye and said, no. And I didn't understand. It didn't make any sense to me. And finally, he explained it. He said, Josh, I want you to start your own company, and I want to be your first customer. And I left that conversation with probably more questions than answers, that's for sure. And it really got the wheels turning on, can I really do this? And the answer was yes. It took some grinding, it took some time, and took a ton of research, but that is really the inception of what became Charge the Line. The obviously the name was more fire related, but charging the line was so much more than just putting water in a hose to put a fire out. Charging the line is also challenging the status quo. It's showing that there is better than average, and something that's great can always be better. And that was more of a challenge to myself, as well as anybody else that would allow me to come and train, to come and teach, to come and hang out. And that's kind of what started it all. Um, Later on at the same company, when I was just beginning Charge the Line, I got passed up for a pretty significant promotion within the company. And I was devastated. And I went right back to the same owner that I had had the conversation with, a few months prior. And I said, did I do something wrong? And he said, well, why would you think that? And I said, well, because I got skipped over. And he said, Josh, he said, I can't invest in somebody that I know is leaving because your business is going to grow and eventually you're going to leave. And I said, well, you can't possibly know that. And he said, I've got a pretty good idea. And sure enough, it wasn't long before business really took off. And I had to let go of that side job teaching because I was flying all over the U.S., teaching fire departments, teaching at conferences, and really teaching in areas that I had no expertise in whatsoever. But what they wanted was leadership. And leadership, no matter how you package it, is the same. You just have to learn how to speak in a language or in the language of your audience. And so that's kind of how it all began.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, that was cool to hear. All right. So, yes, I'm going to make you have your own company and I'm your first client. Like, dude,
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I really appreciated the fact that he saw something in me that I didn't. And really, he was the one that kind of pushed me and stretched me to kind of be where I'm at today. So I do owe a lot, professionally and personally.
Right. Yeah. And when you said that, I was like, man, I wish somebody would have said, hey, you're not here anymore and I'll be your first customer. That's always,
Yeah,
I know as the entrepreneur, that's one of the things you worry about is, will
sure.
I be able to get customers? Will I be able to provide for my family? I mean, I just mentioned that you've been married now for 27 years and you've got 6 children and 2 grandchildren. So you're always
Yeah,
worrying how, as the breadwinner, how do I continue to provide? And
correct.
so that was cool. And that even speaks to, with Charge the Line, challenging the status quo, not just with work. You were challenging the status quo in your personal life too with that, man. Kudos to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so
So
while
thank
you
you.
were, so you've said you've talked to a lot of other groups talking leadership, not just fire.
Correct.
What would you say was the most challenging group for you to learn how to connect with them as far as talking about leadership?
Well, believe it or not, I actually was approached from the ARF working group, which is Aircraft Rescue Firefighting Group out of Plano. And what they are is they are kind of a local group of fire departments, aircraft rescue, airport type fire departments from all over the world. And every year they have a leadership symposium. And they contacted me asking if I would be one of their speakers at this conference in Las Vegas. And I told them, I said, well, I appreciate that, but I know absolutely nothing about aircraft rescue firefighting. I've never had a plane crash in my jurisdiction. I wouldn't have the first clue on what even to talk about. And they said, no, we want you to talk about leadership. And I said, oh, okay, well, that's easy. We can talk leadership all day. But it was a matter of learning the language of aircraft rescue firefighters because it's a different leg of the fire service. Much like wildland firefighters are a different type and a different culture in firefighting. Yes, we're all doing essentially the same thing, but we all speak a different language when it comes to tactics, strategies, concepts, things like that. And so I did. I had to learn a new language. Well, I flew into Vegas. It was a very, very fast trip. I flew in the day before. got to the hotel, walked from my hotel room to the speakers area. I never left the hotel and clocked almost a mile. So I was really dumbfounded by that. I'd never left the hotel, but yet I'd walked almost a mile from my room to the speakers area. So met the folks that I needed to meet, and they said, "Okay, this is where you're going to be speaking." I'm like, "Okay, cool." I didn't poke my head in the room. I figured it was just a kind of a small breakout type workshop room that I was used to at conferences that I'd spoken at in the past. And the next day when I got there, I was in a room with over 600 firefighters from all over the world. And I really didn't know how to take that. That was probably the largest venue that I had spoken at. And the first thing that came out of my mouth when I got mic'd up was, "Wow, I kind of feel like the little kid that gets to eat at the adult table this year," because I had so many people. But even though it was a large group, it was a lot of fun. I was able to kind of still walk around and mingle with the folks while I taught, and still getting feedback even now. And that was a few years ago there with the ARF working group, and that was probably one of the challenges that I ran into, because it was a group that I'd never really dealt with in my career. But still, I don't care what language you speak or what country you're from. Firefighters are firefighters. I have had the opportunity to work with firefighters from all over the world, and we're all the same. There is something inherently wrong with all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something inherently wrong with most people in the world. I mean, you gotta be a little quirky, and then especially moving up into leadership roles.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I was talking with one of my friends the other day. My son races motocross, and he leads a nonprofit group. And he was like, I was telling somebody the other day that to be in my position where I'm at, you have to be crazy. That because I'm basically the one going, "Hey, all the problems that you guys can't solve, give to me. I want all the hard problems. I don't want anything easy. I want it difficult. Give me the hard stuff."
Just gluttons for punishment. That's what leaders are, just gluttons for punishment.
Yeah, but I mean, if you do it right, I mean, it's a beautiful thing, especially if you set up your team around you right. As we were kind of chatting earlier, it just makes it so much easier because you just got those people around you that make it to where you can go and do what you're actually good at, finding those that suit you. It can be quite a great thing facilitating all that too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yes, you're essentially putting a target on your back, but I think you hit the nail on the head. When you surround yourself with people smarter than you, and all they're going to do is make you look good, it gets pretty simple, and I take a look at this mug every day in the mirror, and for me to be able to surround myself with people that make me look good, wow, they're the ones that are doing the work, not really me. So,
right. And I mean, I used to tell people that too when I was coaching is, I was a really good coach when I had really good players on the team. When God blessed those young men and women with a lot of talent, I looked like a great coach.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's like herding cats. I mean, trying to get everybody to row in the same direction. That, to me, that's the leadership challenge. Because if you've ever been in a canoe or something with somebody and y'all are both rowing opposite directions, you're just going to keep spinning. And sometimes you might be rowing against each other, which can not only be exhausting, it can be incredibly frustrating. And just getting everybody to row in the same direction, yeah, that's a challenge, because people are people, and people are going to do what people do. We all have our own visions, our own goals. It's how do we line everybody's goals up to where they're all met, but still we're able to meet the corporate goals of whether it's an organization, a fire department, a committee, a volunteer group. Again, leadership's leadership.
Right. And so how do you go about doing that, helping to get everybody on the same page?
Well, it is a challenge, but to me, the fundamental requirement is relationship. Without relationship, there is no leadership, and without leadership, the communication is broken down, and it's like a three-legged stool. You remove one of the legs, it all falls over. And so I'm a big proponent with relationship. If I go to somebody and the only time that I go and speak with them is when I want something or I need something, there is no relationship. And they can see right through it. But if I'm constantly checking in when I can, and granted, the position that I'm in now, the two departments that I deal with, they're, one of them is about 60 miles away. The other one is 230 miles away. So it's hard to be able to maintain connection. Technology helps. At least we can see each other on a screen, but it's still not the face to face. Technology, never before in human history have we been so connected, but yet never before in human history have we been so disconnected. And unfortunately, people are staring into their screens when their spouse or family member or friend is sitting right across the table from them, but they're doing just the same. And so it's a double-edged sword. But for me, it's everything hinges on relationship. Without relationship, there is no leadership, and that's really where the engagement comes in as well. 33% of the world's workforce is disengaged. That's one third. That means two-thirds are disengaged. Well, if that's the case, what are we doing? And those numbers, they're not getting better. They're either staying the same or they're getting worse. And I think that that's why we have so many problems with recruitment and retention in all organizations is because of that lack of relationship. I've told leaders all the time, if you don't have a relationship with those that you work with or those that work for you, you're not leading at all.
Yeah. I mean, when you were saying that, that's all I was thinking. I was like, man, am I doing a good enough job right now of making sure I stay in touch with getting to know my people that I'm working with, because it is so important to build that. As my man John Maxwell says, leadership is influence. Nothing more,
100%.
nothing less. That's it.
100%. It really is. There was a young man, when I had first went to one of our offsites to kind of meet everybody, I had seen everybody's names so much in rosters as I was creating, within the training division that I'm over. So I had seen the names, I had just never seen the faces. Well, when I, walked onto the job site and I saw their name, stitched on their shirt, I said, hey, how you doing? And I addressed them by their first name. And he looked at me and goes, you know my name? I said, well, yeah, I know most of y'all's names. I just didn't know your faces. And that was huge. He turned around and said, hey, you knew my name. And something that we look at as kind of inconsequential can be very huge for somebody else.
Yeah, no, that is, it's so, I mean, it reminded me of a story with my youngest son. So while I was coaching at a high school, it was one of the cool things that I tell any and everybody about being a high school football coach is over the summer, I just brought my kids with me to the workouts. And
Sure.
a bunch of the other coaches had young kids. And so, I mean, they pretty much had the run of the school to themselves, no supervision, that, just kids being kids. And one day, we're leaving and everybody, as he's going on, everybody's like, bye. And they're like, bye, Levi. And he's, bye, so-and-so, bye. And we go to get in the car. He goes, hey, Dad, I'm pretty important. I was like, okay. I mean, this is like a 6-year-old. Like, okay, how do you figure that? He goes, they all know who I am. They know my name. Like, those big kids know who I am. So, man, that was so good for me to hear you say this, because it just brought that back up to my memory, just how important it is just to know a name.
Exactly. It's very profound, and we take things like that for granted. But man, you think of the dividends that you're reaping just by learning names. And don't get me wrong, I'm one of the worst when it comes to remembering names. So many times people come up to me and they address me by my name, and I'm just like, "Hey, you, how you doing, man? Pal, whatever." And it's like I know who that is. I remember them, and it might take me the rest of the day to recall their name. And so I'm terrible at it. But again, if it's a weakness that I recognize, now I have a responsibility. Get better.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And, one I'll tell anybody is I'm never afraid to go, hey, all right, I recognize your face. Remind me your name again.
Yep.
And
It
then make sure I
happens.
say
It
it 16
does.
more times.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And luckily, folks are gracious. Thank goodness.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I don't know. One that I've always told my wife is, hey, especially when I was coaching, that you'd be out, I mean, when you're in the community, and I'm sure you got
Mm.
this in the ministry work, you'd be out and somebody come up and like, hey, brother Josh. And you're like,
Yeah. Yeah. Hey.
hi, person. And so I
Exactly.
would always get my wife, I'm like, she'd be like, that's rude. You didn't introduce me to him. And I'm like, sweetheart, they were so excited. I didn't want to hurt their feelings that I didn't know their name. Like next
See,
time, just
I
be like,
tell you,
oh, hey, I'm his wife. And they'll be like, oh. And I'll be like, oh, y'all didn't introduce me?
I'm telling you. So I've done that. I've used that tactic. It's a great tactic because, I'll be like, hey, have you met my wife, Courtney? This is my wife, Courtney. And they're like, oh, hey, I'm so and so. And I'm like, now that's who that is. So there you go. Yeah,
Yes.
that one's free, everybody. That you can stick that one in the toolbox.
Yeah. So I was about to say, yeah, make sure if you got value out of just that one, like, subscribe, follow. You're in. Right.
Exactly.
Make sure they send donations, whatever else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, geez. And so now, all right, and so I know you talked a little bit of charge the line. How did I'm assuming the fire department and the Marine Corps, that definitely shaped your leadership background. How would you say that worked out? Like, did you always know, hey, I wanted to be a leader, I wanted to be in charge of people, or was it something that just happened gradually over time?
So I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17. As soon as I graduated, 2 months later, I shipped. And throughout high school and really throughout my career in the Marine Corps, I was the epitome of a follower. I was very easily influenced, good and bad, but I was a follower, big time. And at first, I lamented that man, I had such an opportunity to lead in various areas, within the Marine Corps, and I was given that opportunity at times, but I really felt like I was just a follower. Well, understand that there's no such thing as just a follower. You can't have good leaders if there aren't good followers. Because otherwise, if you're out there leading and nobody is behind you, you're just some guy walking around by themselves. And so, followership is just as important as leadership. And everybody kind of has their area that they really thrive in. And so, for me in the beginning, it was followership, and not because I knew what I was doing. I certainly did not. I was just kind of stumbling and fumbling around. But looking back, I was thankful for those years of being a good follower, a loyal follower, and learning how to defend, I guess, a leader at times when that leader wasn't even around to defend themselves. Because there will be those times within leadership that people are going to badmouth you. The question have you been able to foster relationships with other folks to where they know you well enough and say, no, that is not what they meant, or they would never do anything like that. And so that's kind of what led me to that. In my early career as a firefighter, uh, yeah, as a firefighter, you have to know a little bit about everything. You have to know where every single tool is on that engine. You have to know how to use every single tool, not to mastery, but you do need to know how to use it. You need to be able to do medical. You need to be able to read smoke and do all of these things, but you just have to be a little good at all of them. Whereas when you move up to driver operator, your job is to know everything there is to know about that rig. You need to know where the tools are. You need to know traffic patterns and routes. You need to know pump gear and hydraulic calculations. And then moving on to captain, now you have to know everybody's job, including your own. And then this is where the interpersonal dynamics come into play. You have to learn how to manage people. They don't really teach you that. But, they just figure, okay, well, you were a pretty good driver operator. You stepped up a few times to captain. You took a test and passed it. Had the highest score. You're going to make a great captain. And for some, that is the case. And for some, it's not. They just might be a good test taker. And so as I started moving up the ranks, I realized I had to dial in on what I was passionate about. And I had to really wrestle with that. What is passion? And I kind of came to the conclusion on my own that passion is, what do I wake up thinking about? What do I go throughout my day thinking about? And what do I go to bed thinking about? And what it came down to was leadership. And so I went back to school. Got a bachelor's degree in leadership, and really have never turned back. Uh, I'm not saying education is necessary. It does help. I'm not going to lie. It certainly helped me. But the question is, are leaders born or made? And the answer is yes. They can be born charismatic, but they can always learn how to lead better. Because you have a lot of leaders out there that I certainly wouldn't want to follow, but yet they're in positions of leadership. And the reason being is because maybe they're a great speaker. Maybe they're charismatic and passionate in how they relay information. But as individuals, they could be dirtbags. They could be incompetent and ignorant. But they did one thing right, and that was surround themselves with people who were able to complement those deficits. And in that case, it made them appear to be a good leader. And then some of them, they are jam up leaders because they surround themselves with a good team. So that was kind of my story. And, I certainly didn't just wake up one day and said, you know what, I'm going to lead. And now I was the farthest thing from it. I woke up saying, I want to be a Marine, and that's it. And then, unfortunately, 2 years into my career, I got injured pretty bad. And they discharged me, medically discharged me. And basically they said, you're broke and we don't want you. And those were their exact words. And that was devastating because I'd put all my eggs in the Marine Corps basket. It's all I ever wanted to do. And now I was at a loss. I was kind of stumbling and fumbling and floundering. And, just like with my starting a company, it was simply dumb luck. I stumbled into the fire service. I was working at a little mom and pop cafe, and some guy next to me said, hey, did you ever think about being a firefighter? And I looked at him and said, why would I want to be a firefighter? And he goes, well, I don't know. It's a paramilitary organization. You get to wear a uniform and you get to serve. And I was like, never really thought about it that way. And then the rest is history.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit on one thing that I love, because I'll talk about that too, as far as like, how do people end up in the position they are as far as being the leaders? And oftentimes they say, oh, that you were the best salesman. You're now the boss. It's like, how did we get there? Just because they're a really good salesperson, or just because, like you said, they take the test and they can pass the chief's test or captain's test. You're now the captain. But I think it's so important why we're doing what we're doing is to help to develop leaders. Because I'm with you. I don't really I think leaders are developed. I don't believe that leaders are like, there's some things that are more natural than others, as far as like, well, I mean, me and you sitting here holding a conversation and talking with people in front of crowds or what have you, that kind of comes naturally to some people. But being a leader is tough. And I think it's something you got to learn. And it's something that you can learn, and anybody can learn. It just, some people might need a little bit more of a push out of their shell than others to do these things. So I thought 100%. That was phenomenal that you said that, man. That was great. And so I know I'm kind of doing a little bit different now, as far as I was trying to do these like in an hour, but getting close to the half hour. That was one thing I was recommended by a couple of my listeners and followers. It's like, shorten it up, man. Get to the meat and potatoes. And so kind of want to start wrapping it up here. I tell everybody I love that I became real passionate about personal development and growth. And so what would be the one book that you would tell everybody that they have to read?
Oh, man, looking at my bookshelf there, how could I narrow it down to one? Some very influential books and authors are some of the greats that are, no longer with us, but yet their literature is still used in most leadership classes across the world. I would have to say The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. That was one that was pivotal in my growth. The Leadership Challenge by Kouzes and Posner. There's a guy that maybe some of the folks have never heard of. His name is Skip Pritchard, and he wrote a book that was called The Book of Mistakes. Very easy read, and just eye-opening. So if I could just narrow it down to, I know you said one, I said three. Those would probably be the most influential. But leaders are learners. Don't ever stop learning. The moment that you think you got it all figured out, just hang it up because you're done. Uh, there's always new concepts or even repurposed and packaged concepts that we can all learn from. But I would say those three big time.
Yeah, I was about to say, and for those of y'all that are watching like on YouTube or Spotify, I did put those up as he was talking about it, so you could see what they look like. I'll say I'm interested to go find the Book of Mistakes, man. That's
It's so Skip Pritchard, just real quick. I think we got connected on LinkedIn or some sort of social media, and he had shared, "Hey, I'm thinking about writing a book, and this is it." And I just encouraged him. I'm like, "Man, that's awesome! I've always wanted to write a book," and just encouraged him and such. And he sent me a manuscript before it even came out, and so I had the opportunity to read it. And then after the book came out, he sent me an autographed copy. I was like, "Wow, that's really cool." But yeah, probably one of the coolest books I've read. I'm not big into fiction, but what he does is he writes in fiction form, but all the principles are all they're actionable items you can use right then and there. And it was really, really cool.
yeah.
But yeah, Skip
I'll say.
Pritchard, Book of Mistakes.
So so it sounds a lot like I've read like some John Gordon books and Andy Andrews. I love how
Yes,
they do that type of stuff and weave the story in or the principle into the story. Love that. So man,
correct,
I'm gonna have to check
correct.
that one out.
It's
I'm
good.
excited to go
It's
check
good.
it out. And so, what are you reading currently, or maybe just finished?
So actually, believe it or not, just yesterday I finished Patrick Lencioni's Six Types of Working Genius, and it's again, if you're familiar with Pat Lencioni, he does the same thing. He writes a fictional fable up front, and then the back half of the book is all of the principles and how to use them. And what this is every person essentially has six types of working genius. They're God-given gifts and talents that God has blessed us with. Now, my geniuses may not necessarily be somebody else's. It could be their frustrations. It could be their working competencies. So your genius is what breathes life into you. You think about how many times you've gone to work and you worked an 8 hour day and you come home and you're just whooped. You're drained, you got no energy, and you don't feel like you got anything accomplished. Well, the very next day, you work in the same environment for the same time frame, but you come back energized, charged up. You feel like you could take on the world, and you're just pumped. Well, what they're able to put into words essentially is what we're already doing. Each one of us has, out of those six types, each one of us has two geniuses, two types of work that really breathe life into us and energize us and pump us up. We each have two competencies. Those competencies are not exactly what we want to do or like to do, but we're capable of doing it. And we can do it, but if we do it for too long, it's going to burn us out. And then we have those working frustrations. The working frustrations are just that. We're not going to be very good at it. If we're forced to do it, it's probably not going to be a very good product coming out finished. But sometimes we have to push through. We all have to do work that we don't enjoy. It's the old maxim. They wouldn't call it work if everybody liked it, right? But yeah, that's what I
No
just
doubt
finished
about
up.
that.
It's a very easy read. I got the book on Saturday afternoon. I had it finished by Sunday evening, and I wasn't like just powering through it. I was just picking it up every now and then, reading a few chapters here and there. But I would highly recommend that book because I'm a firm believer. I believe it can change an organization because it's going to show through an assessment where your genius, competencies, and frustrations are.
Yeah, and man, that's such a good one because I mean, everybody's done the personality test. That whether you do, what's the one where the ENTJSQR whatever,
Yeah, Myers Briggs.
Myers Briggs. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
that mine's changed every single time. I don't remember
Yep.
what it is, and I mean, there's like 37 different combinations. I mean, I can barely
Yeah.
remember what I had for breakfast. What that?
And that's the beauty part because they did pose that question to the author of, do your geniuses change? And his answer was an emphatic no, because God has blessed us with certain gifts and talents, and those talents never change. I use the word very carefully that they may evolve, right? you may get smarter in those areas or more educated or more experienced in those areas. But those skill sets that you're blessed with and that you're good at, you don't lose those. And so that's the cool part. Because, yeah, I've done Myers-Briggs. I've done the Clifton Strengths Finder. I've done those, but they always changed because as I grew in my leadership walk, those would change. Your gifts, based on the 6 types of working genius, they don't change.
Yeah, and that's another one because I'm ready. I got to go get that one too. It'll definitely be on my list of books. I'll probably buy it before the end of tonight.
Oh, I think it's going to be a game changer. I'm really excited to do the assessment with the organization that I'm with now at all levels because I really think it's going to be eye-opening.
Right. Yeah. And I do agree with that. If those are the areas that means they're the best ones. That's just like, there are certain things like I tell people are people that you are who you are. I've never seen a zebra change their stripes. Now you can get
Correct.
better at some things, but your core is always going to be who you are. And so
Yes.
that's perfect. And so Josh, as we're starting to wrap up, man, the final question that I ask everybody is that what's something that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
That's a good question. Something you should have asked me that you didn't. Man, I don't really know how to answer that. That's a first for me, being at a loss for words because, buddy, I can talk the horn off a billy goat. Let's see.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm stealing that. Talk the horn
They
off.
take it because I probably stole it from somebody else. Um, you know, maybe if you could change something, from the past, to develop better, what could you have done different? And granted, hindsight's always 2020. We can always look back and say, yeah, I wished I'd done this, or I would have, or could have, or should have. But the cool part is, life doesn't come with an instruction book. We have to learn as we go. And it's those experiences, and sometimes the most painful experiences are the ones that will stick with us and the ones that we learn the most from. I tell people all the time, I definitely have more losses chalked up than wins, but at least I was able to learn something from those losses to do better next time. And maybe not even for myself, but to be able to show somebody on how not to do it. So yeah. If you were to ask me a question, that's what I would ask. What would you have done different? And my answer is probably nothing. Some things, yeah, maybe adjusted, but I don't regret, the decisions I've made, even those failures, especially because the failures are what I learned most from. It's kind of like with your children as you're raising them. You don't want to discipline them, but pain has a way of making you remember, and
Right.
and that's kind of how I look at that.
No, that was good. That was good, and that made me think. Reminded me of something that I'd heard at a conference last week. Was that they were talking about, when somebody brings up a new idea, you bring in a new person, and instead of going, "Oh man, we tried that already, it doesn't work." Well, hey, this is what we did before. This is why it didn't work. How would what you are suggesting make it different this time? Like, should we want to do that instead of just no, we're not doing it. So I thought that was good. That to remind me on that. Well, Josh, I appreciate you hopping on here and sharing some leadership nuggets. I know we'll definitely have to get together again.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk more about
thanks for having me.
And so if any of the listeners want to get in touch with you, how do they reach you?
A couple different ways. I am on LinkedIn under Fire288. The Fire is all lowercase. It's my old officer number when I started LinkedIn 100 years ago when it first came out. Also, you can reach me at josh@chargetheline.com, or you can just go to chargetheline.com and you can link up with me that way. I always don't hesitate to give my phone number out. It's 409-291-1610. Phone never turns off. If I don't answer your call, it's probably because I don't recognize the number, and that's okay. Just leave me a message or send me a text. Hey, this is so-and-so. Saw you on the podcast. got some questions. And I may not be able to get back with you immediately, but I certainly will get back with you because I could talk leadership. And if you come at me with a challenge, oh man, challenge accepted. Let's do it.
Yes. And so all that information, guys, it is listed below. It's in the description. Josh, I appreciate it. Looking forward to doing it again.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks again, Aaron. I appreciate the time.
My pleasure. What an awesome episode that was. Wasn't Josh amazing? And look, man, I don't know about you, but look, I've got a couple pages full of notes just from going through and talking about all the stuff that Josh hit on. And so a couple of the key takeaways that I have, and if you're still watching on YouTube or Spotify, I'm putting them up there for you. And he talked about how challenging the status quo is essential for growth and improvement, and how leadership is about building relationships and effective communication. He talked about how followership is just as important as leadership, because good leaders need good followers. And we talked about the importance of surrounding yourself with smarter people than you are, and how it enhances your leadership effectiveness, and how the journey of entrepreneurship is about resilience and adaptation. And so, in closing, guys, if you're looking for leadership or personal growth training, could be for you, your team, or an event, reach out to me. I'd love to be able to help you on this journey and inspire you. And again, all my contact information is listed below. But I'm going to put it back on the screen one quick time for those of you who are watching. Okay. And so you can reach me at either social, website, and I promise I'll get back to you as soon as possible. It's also listed right there in the description. And remember, you don't need to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. So keep leading, keep growing, and keep innovating. Until next time, stay connected and inspired, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Clark Connection Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Clark Connection Podcast, where my goal is to add value to you. Make sure you like and follow the show. You can also connect with me via my website, coachaclark.com, or on all socials at coach_A_Clark. The links are in the description. Huge thanks to my sponsors, Wayne with 7K Metal Associates, Bobbie at A Comfy Quest LLC, and Andrew at Automate Integrate Professional Services. We look forward to bringing you more great content. See you next week.